Hello, Roger. This is Andrew with Joda Home Inspections. I'm just finishing up your report now. I'm going to run through my notes and highlight some of the more important items. Really pretty smooth condition overall, but definitely a handful of good finds. Um, First thing I'll talk about is the plumbing. There's PEX plumbing throughout the house, which is good. PEX is a plastic pipe, and that's what they still use on most new construction. PEX is good to have. For the hot water, it's an indirect water heater. So you don't have a traditional water heater that has gas fed to it that heats up the hot water. You have a boiler. The boiler heats the hot water, puts it in the tank, and then that hot water is used for both the radiant heat, and then it also supplies the hot water for all the fixtures. The driveway heat is a separate system. Um, the boiler for the driveway heat had a little bit of a stain underneath it, and it looks like the valve has been turned off, probably because it has an active leak. So I didn't test the driveway heat. It's a specialty item anyway, and so I wouldn't have ran it, but I did make note of this apparent leak, and the valve is off to it. So I definitely recommend having that repaired. I ran the majority of the radiant heat zones. I looked at that with infrared. I can see that that was heating up the way that it should. For the cooling, there are 3 AC units. All 3 units are located in the attic, and then you have 3 condensers outside. One of the 3 condensers was flipping the breaker whenever I reset the breaker, and so that needs to be addressed. I'd recommend having an HVAC technician look at that specifically. The other 2 AC units were running fine. One of the AC units has a catch, well, all of them have a catch pan, but one of them in the attic had a lot of water inside the catch pan. That's a sign that it's leaking. I'd recommend having that serviced by an HVAC technician. You also had a second unit that had not as much condensate, but definitely some water in the catch pan. Same thing with that. I'd recommend getting that serviced. And I would be curious if once that third unit is functioning as well, if that would also start to lose condensate once it was built up. And next thing I'll talk about is the electrical. You have grounded copper wiring throughout the house, which is good. That's all I would expect to find on this age of a house is grounded copper. You have 3 panels. You have a main panel outside. That's where the main disconnects are. And then you have 2 sub panels down in the basement in a mechanical room. It's in the same mechanical room that services the hot tub. And so there are a lot of chemicals stored in that room. I would, ideally, you wouldn't have those sub panels in the same room that they're storing water and acid mixed together. The panel screws are very rusted and corroded, and when I pulled the panel covers off, the bare copper wires were all slightly discolored, and there's kind of the beginning stages of some corrosion going on inside the panel. I would recommend now, since they do share a space, at least moving the chemicals out of that room. That way, what's mixed and is being used is in a somewhat closed system inside tanks and tubes. But at least the dry chemicals being stored are stored somewhere else. There's an outbuilding accessible from the backyard. Maybe stick them somewhere like that. Next thing I'll talk about is a roof. You have architectural shingles. These are a much thicker shingle than what is standard. These are more of a lifetime shingle, or they might have a 50-year warranty. Typical architectural shingle lasts 20 to 25 years. Ones that are these thick last much longer. Architectural shingles, and then you also have some black membrane. With the membrane, I found at least one seam that was separated. It'd be best to have a roofer evaluate that and repair that so that water's not getting underneath the seam. I'm not positive what system this was for. It looked like some sort of a transmitter. They had it basically siliconed to a piece of the membrane. I have photos of it in the report. That's come loose, and so it's not a hole in the roof, but that transmitter and the kind of flashing they designed to hold it up has now fallen down into a valley. You want to have that repaired. So it's propped up the way that they wanted it to be. Again, I don't know what system that was for. Next thing on the roof, towards the front of the house, that's where I was able to access the roof. It's one of the lower sections. There was a handful of damaged shingles. Couldn't tell what it was that caused the damage to them. It doesn't look like moisture, and it doesn't look like normal deterioration, but I recommend having that spot repaired. Handful of exposed nails on the roof that you want to have sealed up as well. Structurally, the house looked great. I didn't see any indication of excessive structural movement. You have the daylight basement downstairs that walks out into the backyard. And then you also have a pretty extensive crawl space. It's accessible through a hatch in the gym. It's above a mirror, so you need a ladder to get into it, but then it extends under a large portion of the house. The attic access is upstairs. When you walk in the front door, there's a closet by the half bath. It's accessible there. And then you also have another attic access accessible up in the mother-in-law apartment. This attic is a little unique in that they insulated directly under the roof. That way you can move around throughout the attic much easier than if they had blown in the insulation. That makes it a lot nicer in a lot of ways. That's where 2 of the AC units are on the main attic, and then the other AC is above the mother-in-law apartment. Outside, the balconies had some deteriorated grout. Several balconies had this going on. I would recommend having a mason repair that grout, and then also monitoring where the water is running off of the sidewalls. I noticed that some of the stone veneer also had a fair amount of deterioration, and so you want to watch that and maintain any mortar that's deteriorating over time. Inside, I found 2 areas where it looks like water's come through. One was in a front bedroom on the front of the house. Underneath the window, I could see some stains. The baseboard was pulled away from the house, or from the wall rather, and then the wood flooring was very warped. I put my light on it and tried to get a photo to show that the boards were kind of crowning, but water's definitely come through there. I'd recommend having that repaired, but I couldn't see where it was getting through. It wasn't coming in an obvious spot where there was a gap in the roof, where there was missing flashing, or coming in through a gap around the window. I'd recommend having it further evaluated by a contractor and see if they might be able to put some water on it and try to trace it. Start low, work your way up, and then as they move further up the house with water, monitoring when it comes in and then addressing it from there. And then on the interior as well, you want to maybe open up that drywall, treat it for mold, and then refinish that flooring if they can salvage that flooring. It did have a pretty significant warp to it. Talked about roof structure, HVAC, electrical, plumbing. I'm going to run through my notes and make sure I've mentioned all the more minor items. Oh, I mentioned that there was 2 spots that I noticed moisture. So one was that bedroom on the front of the house. Second was in the living room on the main floor. So when you're looking at the fireplace, it's on the wall to the left. It was very subtle, but I found some drip marks that look like they've come down the drywall. It is on an exterior wall, so it's possible that it did come in from outside or through the roof. Same thing, I couldn't tell exactly where it came from, but I did make note and get photos of it in the report. It was dry when I was there. I couldn't find anything with my moisture meter or with infrared, but at a minimum, it's something that you want to monitor and be aware of. Most important items, I would say, are the AC unit that doesn't work, the condensate underneath the other 2 ACs, the boiler having a leak for the driveway heat system, the water that's gotten in on the front of the house. The sewer looked really good. I sent the video for that already. I didn't find any standing water, no offsets. Really, the sewer looked like it was performing the way that you want it to be. I accessed it through an access in the crawl space. It was kind of tough to get to, but I was just glad that I was able to find an access point, because until I found that one, I couldn't find a spot that I was going to be able to go through. The other thing with the sewer system is that the basement has a sewage ejector pump. So everything downstairs gets fed to this pump, and then once it fills up, it will lift it up into the sewer system, and then it can go out with gravity. But with where the sewer line is outside, that's the only way to do it, because you sit below where the sewer line would be, and so you can't drain it with gravity without lifting it up first. Uh, the radon came back very low. I think it was only at 0.4 or 0.5, which is great. There is a radon mitigation system there. One thing that they could have done better with their system, with the radon system, is that they added a vapor barrier in the crawl space, but they did not secure it to the foundation wall. It's best that it be secured to the foundation wall so that it's sealed better. That way they're getting more suction and pulling all the air and radon they can from underneath that vapor barrier and not from just the air in the crawl space. Just running through these notes to make sure I've mentioned everything I want to. There will definitely be some more minor items. Overall, I'd say it went pretty smoothly. Oh, there was a return air vent that looked like it was disconnected in the attic. I could see the spot where it looks like it was supposed to be connected, but I don't think that was by design. Um, for the duct that I found to just be left unattached. A couple of the casement windows were binding on the jamb. You want to have those adjusted so they can open and close smoothly. Uh, the door threshold that goes into the basement mechanical room in the gym was detached. I'm curious if that might be because of the buildup of heat and even possibly moisture that builds up in that room. It was very hot. In fact, the gym was much warmer than other areas in the basement. I would recommend adding some sort of a mechanical fan to draw the air out of there and get it outside. Um, Otherwise, it's going to be putting off a lot of heat. Very good. That's everything I have for you. I wanted to make this video to kind of recap all the more important findings, but everything that I mentioned plus more will be in the report. Very good. Thank you very much.